good, everybody? It's your boy Hamza from Ather Gaming coming to you guys with a brand new video. This time, guys, you saw from the title, it's a top 8 Drytron deck profile that was piloted by my little brother. He did a super great job, guys, and he's going to do an awesome job explaining every single card choice. If you guys are interested in more videos, go ahead and subscribe, guys. Leave a like on this video. Without further ado, let's get right into it.
Okay, guys, so getting into the deck profile, I played 3 copies of Alpha and 3 copies of Zeta. This is standard, you know. Alpha is just more copies of Ben 10, and if you see Ben 10, you basically just win. And Zeta is, you know, Alpha Zeta full combo, you know, standard. You end on like multiple negates, and you know, you extra deck lock your opponent, and it's really hard for your opponent to play if you see both these guys. That's why you max out on 3 of them both. You should not be playing any less. Then you played 2 copies of Gamma and 1 copy of Delta. So 2 copies of Gamma is pretty standard, but the 1 Delta is something that I do see people like going back and forth on whether they want to play 2 copies. I've seen some students play 3 Deltas, but I think Delta is the worst one because Delta is actually the worst one to start your play with. It and Gamma are the worst ones to start your play with, but Delta doesn't actually combo with any other name besides Alpha, whereas Gamma combos with both Alpha and Zeta. And if you open Alpha and Zeta plus Gamma, you can actually play through a lot of hand traps, whereas Delta doesn't do that. Delta is really just here for another name to kind of get your play going, as well as in the grind game he comes up really big because drawing a card every single turn becomes really important. So that's why I played those. Those were the 9 like actual Drytrons I played. I wish, honestly, I do wish that I played more names because I actually did brick a lot. So if you guys don't know, my final record was I went X2. It was 6 rounds, so I went 4-2. Not the best, but it was enough to get top 8. And like I have like over a 90% chance to open at least 1 name, but I found that like I had multiple games over the regionals where I just wasn't opening a name, or I was only opening 1 name, and I couldn't actually play at all. So I would definitely add in a 2nd copy of Delta, maybe even, you know, like once we get into the spells, maybe add another spell. But this is just what I actually brought to the event, and you know, topped with. Then for the fairy component, it was 3 copies of Diviner. Only 2 copies of Orange Light and 1 Eva. Eva, I don't have to get into Eva, you know, it's at 1. I personally think that 1 was even correct when it was at 2, but you know, that's not really a conversation worth having because it's at 1. Diviner standard, I know this card is pretty expensive, but if you can just get your hands on 1 copy of Diviner, you can play the deck. Just replace the 2nd and 3rd copies with like a Manju and like a Cyber Petite Angel, and you'll be able to do pretty well. Of course, there'll be differences, but you know, when you're on a budget, there's always differences. 2 Orange Light because you only need the 2. I've seen some people cut down to 1. I think that's wrong though, because you need 1 to search off of Eva, and you need the other one to search in case you hard draw a fairy, which allows you to play through Nibiru, or I guess play around Nibiru, because you get the negate before they can Nibiru you. So yeah, the fairies overall though, they are like bricky kind of, because they don't actually like combo that well. The Diviner only combos with Zeta like well. You can Diviner and Alpha can play, Diviner and Delta and Gamma can play, but it's just not good, so you'd rather not open with those. But yeah, you still have to play them though, because Diviner going 2nd is like one of my favorite cards in this entire deck, because it sends Entis and pops a card, and that means that it's always going to trade with 1 form of disruption, which really is annoying because you still have 5 cards in your hand to deal with. So yeah, so that's it for the 6 fairies. Then I played, for the rituals, I played 1 Ben 10, I played 1 Eda 10, 1 Ultimateness, and 1 Draconids. Move some more over. Ben 10, of course, standard. You know, you're gonna play Ben 10 as long as it's legal. Eda 10 is actually really clutch, because Eda 10 helps make Beatrice when your Diviner gets negated, because you overlay an Eda 10 and a Ben 10 into the Beatrice. Eda 10 is also really powerful because Eda 10 can boost the attack of your Ultimateness up, so it can actually attack over things, or you can protect it from being attacked over. Same thing with Draconids. Eda 10 can bump the Draconids up. So you need to play these 3 for sure, I think. But Draconids was actually one of the most underrated cards in my entire deck, and performed beyond expectation, because I had multiple matchups and multiple situations where my opponent had a Nibiru in their hand, but they weren't able to Nibiru me because I summoned the Draconids on like the 4th summon, and I was just able to kill them with it. Whereas if I went to a Boral Sword line, I would have played into the Nibiru. And yeah, Draconid's super strong. A lot of decks just can't kill it. Like I had a live twin match that I played against where he had his twins in attack position, and so my Draconid just rammed into both of them for like almost 6k damage. And yeah, it was so free. Draconid's also, it provides pretty good disruption as well, because you basically says banish 2 Drytrons from grave to target 2 cards your opponent controls and sends them, but you can only do that during your opponent's turn, and you can only target face-up cards. So it's like a really bad form of disruption, because it doesn't actually do anything on your turn, and it has to only out face-up cards. So you know what, like, it is what it is, but it's still really strong. It also has targeting protection for monsters, meaning I played against once again that same evil twin player that I played against. He actually did have trouble outing this card because I just kept negating his trouble sunny in grave, and he could never actually just like remove this card from the field. And even when they do remove this the Draconids from the field, because it's a ritual monster, you can keep bringing it back from the grave, so it provides the deck a grind game. And it provides the deck of boss monsters that they can keep bringing back and they can keep threatening game with, which I think is really powerful, especially once you've exhausted Boral Sword already. And finally, the reason why I play this card was because Artifact Scythe is becoming more prominent in the meta, and Draconid's a boss monster that can not only play under or through Scythe, but it can actually kill under Scythe, so it's really, really strong. I definitely think it is worth playing. I didn't play Natasha because I personally didn't find her necessary, but if you do want to play her, I don't think she's a bad inclusion. I just find her kind of bricky, so I didn't play her. And then off of the bricks, speaking about bricky, I played one Scythe and then the hero bricks. So it's Scythe, the Celestial, and Plasma. Celestial, you know, generic, you know, like you want to get that draw too. Scythe is actually really nice because Scythe is a light fairy, meaning you can actually search Scythe off Ben 10 in really weird hands. Like if you open like Delta Diviner or Gamma Diviner, that's not combo, but you can still go like DPE and Ben 10 searches the Scythe, so you still have it a Scythe lock during your opponent's turn. So it actually isn't like the worst because it still buys you another turn. Celestial will draw you 2 on the next turn, DP will pop cards on your turn and your opponent's turn, so it actually is pretty good. You know, it locks out your opponent for the entire turn, and it actually gives you advantage once your turn comes back around. So I do think it's really strong. Celestial, of course, mandatory. If you guys have seen the banlist prediction video, I do think that this card is going to, it might not get hit, sorry, but I do think that it is a card which is worth, you know, looking into on Konami's end, because it's obviously not going to ban DPE or ban Fusion Destiny. So hitting Celestial and hurting the overall engine is definitely something I could see happening. And Plasma, honestly, playing Plasma was a mistake, and I recommend anybody who picks a Zek up to play a card like Dasher or play a card like even like a Malicious, just anything that you can special summon back off of DPE over Plasma, because there was a time against like the striker matchup is pretty difficult, and so if you use DPEs affecting the grave, they can shark cannon the DPE, and then during your send my phase you're forced to bring back Celestial, right? And why is that a problem? Well, that's a problem because DPE it's forced to summon back Celestial because, you know, it's you already activated its effect, right? And the Drytrons all have like a restriction that you cannot special summon monsters that can be normal summon / set the same turn that you use the Drytron effects. Basically saying if you special summon Celestial back off DPE, you cannot use any Drytron effects that turn. And the reason why that's so relevant is that that's going to shut down your entire engine. Not only that though, but even if you do get to manage, even if you do manage to link the Celestial off and get it back in the grave, Celestial can't use its effect to draw 2 the same turn it was sent to the grave. So you actually, not only do you lose the DPE, you lose all your Drytrons, you also lose a draw 2. So you get pushed so far back in advantage. Whereas if you played a card like Dasher, when they banish your DP from your grave, you can still bring out like the Dasher from the grave, like in place of Plasma, you can bring back the Dasher. Then you can link the Dasher off and still get the Celestial draw 2. It's not good, like you're still not in a good position, but at least you got the draw 2, so at least you can kind of try to wiggle your way through. I never ever saw him Plasma, but I just think he's funny and he's cool to play, so that's why I played him. And so that's it for the monsters. Now off of the spells, I went pretty heavy on them, I think. I played 3 copies of Emergency, 3 copies of Nova, and 1 Foolish Burial. So these are my like additional Drytron names. I didn't play the Fafnir, the field spell. I played 40 cards by the way, and I didn't play the field spell, but I do recommend playing the field spell, especially considering how much I was bricking. I definitely do recommend playing a field spell and maybe even a second Delta. Foolish Burial is a card that I do think that a lot of people have cut from this list, and the reasoning behind it is that Foolish Burial as a top deck is pretty bad because you can't bounce your Drytrons off of it, and Foolish Burial also it plays into cards like DD Crow and cards like Ghost Spell, and you know, it puts the Drytrons in the grave, which is when they're most susceptible, which is true. But Nova does essentially the same thing, right? Because you Nova, then you link the Drytron off, and then you can still get hit by, you know, pretty similar cards. But anyways, I still think that Foolish Burial is 100% worth playing. It's just more names, it's more consistency, and Foolish Burial actually has the added ability of, you know, I'm sure everyone knows, but you can send any monster from the grave. So if your Ben 10 ever gets ashed at an awkward point, or if your Beatrice gets negated, you can Foolish Burial to mill a ritual monster and then ritual summon it back. Foolish Burial also plays really well under Droll, very similar to Nova in that sense, because you can Foolish Burial a card like Eterton, and then keep looping that with a Ritual spell in the rank 1, and you can just go for like a DPE Scythe Block and just be safe for the next turn. Emergency, you don't have to get into it. It plays in a Droll, so sometimes you can side out one copy of it going second, but still, I still think it's worth playing. Nova's amazing. Nova was an actually incredible card, and you're going to see that once I go to the extra deck. And Foolish Burial is just Foolish Burial, yeah. So that's my reasoning. If you do want to cut Foolish, you can. I just don't think it's worth it. Then off to more consistency spells. I played 2 copies of Prep. Prep, I should have been playing at 1, and I'm glad that I played 2 at the regional, so I could actually realize why playing 1 would be correct. And the reason why is that 1 Prep, it might seem like it's kind of stupid, because why would you play a non-searchable one of that's not at 1 when you can just play it at 3? And the reason behind it is that the first Prep is always going to get Ben 10, right? If you play 5 copies of Ben 10, which you do because you play 3 Diviner, 1 Ben 10, and the 1 Prep, if you do play those ratios, you have a good chance of seeing 1, and you have a very low chance of seeing 2. And the reason why that's relevant is that the second Prep is almost always like a bad card after the first Prep resolves. So that's why I definitely do think you should be playing 1 Prep in the deck at least, because people are always going to Ash the Alpha, and seeing Prep will help play through that. But I definitely should have just played 1, because I had a lot of hands where I clogged on fairies or on rituals, and cards like Prep definitely did contribute to that. So I would cut this card down to 1 for more Drytron names, as I'd rather open more Drytrons than open more fairies, because the Drytron just naturally push through more than the fairies do. But yeah, I'll probably just cut this card down to 1 and add in, as mentioned before, 1 Fafnir or the field spell and a second copy of Delta. So yep. And then for the kind of going second board break defensive type cards, I play 3 copies of Droplet and 3 copies of Talents. Talents, another card that like this card, it definitely overperformed for me. Like in testing going into the event, Talents almost did nothing. Like it would sometimes be okay, I guess, but it was never really the best. In the event though, I was getting hand trapped like left, right, and center, and Talents not only drawing 2 and drawing me into cards like Ben 10, Prep, Diviner to help play through the Ash Blossom on the Alpha, but also like being able to look at my opponent's hand when I was going second. You can look at your opponent's hand and you can rip out like a problematic hand trap. Like I played against a striker player and I used Talents. I looked at his hand and I put back his engage because I knew he had it. And if I drew 2, I would have to draw 2 very specific cards to be able to win. Whereas if I put back the engage, I'm putting him on a top deck, right? Because he didn't have Raid Engrave and I killed the Shizuku. And I did end up winning that game because of it. So it definitely was really, really big. And I would definitely recommend playing this card. This card did a lot going first, did a lot going second, helps play through hand traps while also playing through boards. It's very strong. Droplet, I don't have to get into it. Droplet is the best going second card in my opinion in this format. It's basically just a quick play Dark Ruler. And in decks like Drytron or decks like PK, decks that can really capitalize off the grave, this card is just even more free. And with Diviner, you can like normal summon Diviner, use Diviner's effect, and if they anchor or Veiler or Imperm your Diviner, you can chain Droplet to send the Diviner from the field to the grave to not only dodge their disruption on the Diviner so that it'll make the Diviner resolve, but then now Diviner can send Entis, and Entis can pop an opponent's card. So your Diviner and your Droplet, not only is Droplet going to negate an opponent's monster, but the Diviner is going to dodge their first disruption, and the Entis is going to force their second. So Droplet Diviner forces out like 3 disruptions going second, bare minimum. So it's really strong. And then the last 3 cards, I played 40 cards at the event. The last 3 cards were the one-offs, 1 Called By, 1 Ritual Spell, and 1 Fusion Destiny. 1 Ritual Spell I think is fine. I wasn't really expecting a lot of DD Crow or a lot of, like Shadal Aerial, and I didn't play against any decks that had that, so I definitely think the 1 DD Crow was fine. You can up it to 2 if you're really scared of it, but I honestly think if you just manage your resources properly, maybe go for a little lighter of an end board while also being able to maintain resources for next turn and hold the Ritual Spell in hand at the end of it. Sometimes that's just the correct play to play around those cards. Or you just do full combo and you just put them on, like them not being able to remove this card from your grave because they won't be able to play through the board to begin with. Called By his God card, like every time I saw this card, like it was just so good, I won. And Fusion Destiny, this is like an argument whether you can play it at 1 or 3. I played at 1 though because playing it at 3, I understand it helps push through more things because like you get hand trapped like 3 times, 4 times, and then you just Fusion Destiny and you still end on DPE with a draw 2 next turn and you just control the game and you just snowball out of control. But why would I want to play multiple Fusion Destinies for that reason if drawing multiple names could do that too, right? Like I did test with 3 Fusion Destinies, and oftentimes when I drew like a Fusion Destiny, if I had just drawn other names, I probably would have been able to just play, like if I saw more engine in place of the Fusion Destiny in hand, I would probably be able to play through the exact same things, if not play through even more. So that's why I just opted to play the one. Hard drawing it is still pretty good because it does help play through some things, but the one is fine just to send off Anaconda. You're playing a Drytron deck, and I think the only decks that should be playing 3 Fusion Destinies are decks that, you know, whose end board isn't really as powerful, or who don't have a high ceiling, or who just don't have a lot of strength in their engine to begin with. And Fusion Destiny is good at 3 of in those decks, but a deck like Drytron where you easily spam, you easily kill, the one is fine for the Anaconda. So that's it for the main. It was 40 cards. I already spoke about the changes I would definitely make, but yeah. Going on into the extra deck, we have the card that actually made Nova insane, and it was Relinquish Anima. I won't go on too long for the extra deck because extra deck is all pretty generic stuff, but Relinquish Anima, I see a lot of people playing Link Rebo instead, and I never understood why, because Link Rebo is only worth playing over Anima in a deck that either A, you need the downward pointer, which in Drytron you don't, or B, you care about Link Rebo's like typing, right? Because Link Rebo's a Cyber, so maybe you do some secure guard in place with it. But if your deck does not specifically care about those things, why should you ever be playing Link Rebo? And Anima is just so powerful, it's so strong. There were multiple times when people just didn't play around this card, and I could summon Anima, and I would force out cards like DPE. I forced it out cards like, you know, Droplets, you know, and there are a lot of people who just don't know Anima's ruling. So one time I was playing against a player, and I used Anima's effect to target one of his monsters, and he went Chain DPE, right? So he popped my Anima, but the way that ruling works is that if Anima or Thousand Eyes or any card like that targets a monster to equip it, and the card is then removed before it can resolve, the card that it targets still just gets sent to the grave. So his monster still got sent to the grave, and that actually really put me, you know, like pretty far ahead, because my Nova just traded with, you know, 2 forms of disruption, the DP and the monster that I sent with Anima. And not only that, it's not even like I lost advantage in that trade, because I still had my Drytron in grave, which it was gonna get in grave anyways, because even if this was Link Rebo, my Drytron I was gonna link off to play with the in grave. It's just Anima can also help force out negates. Once again, going back to that Evil Twin matchup, Trouble Sunny points up, so you can summon Anima there, force a Trouble Sunny against, you know, decks like Salamander. They give you the Sunlight Wolf pointer. You summon Anima, you force out their counter trap, you force out their rage, their roars. Against a card like Appaloosa, this card forced to negate. This card is so strong, and I definitely recommend playing it in this deck. Next, you have the Link 2s, 1 Anaconda and 1 Dagda. This stuff is pretty standard, you know, like I play DPE Scythe, so whenever you get drolled, 99% of the time, you just end on an end board that's Anaconda, Dagda. You go Anaconda effect, Mill Fusion, Chain Dagda, set Scythe, end with DPE Scythe, and then you just win, because you draw 2 and Scythe lock your opponent, so it's pretty strong there. Then for the other links I played 1 Phoenix and I played 1 Unicorn. Unicorn was really iffy because I didn't play Access Code, and Unicorn actually never came up, but it is useful for outing like weird cards like Avramax, or, you know, a card like Utopic Future Draco. Like it's relevant there. Phoenix won me a game because I was able to pop my opponent's back row when I only had 100 life points left and the back row was burning me. So I made a Phoenix, I popped the back row, and I was actually able to kill them at 100 life points, and I got drolled that game. So that was a pretty crazy game. Last link was Boral Sword. I didn't play Appaloosa, I didn't play Access Code. There's no point in playing those monsters because you're almost never going for them. I didn't play IP either because I honestly just couldn't fit it. But if you do find a card that you want to cut for it, feel free to play IP. But Boral Sword, I'm so happy I played this over Access Code, because there are so many games that I had Boral Sword plus a Drytron, and that was it. That was the most I could do, and that's perfect 8k. Boral Sword also kills 2 cards like Shizuku, because it'll gain the Shizuku's attack, meaning it'll make up for the difference that it lost on its next attack, so it's really strong there. Then for the XCs, I played 2 Mew Beta. I played the 1 Independent Nightingale, the 1 Assembled Nightingale, so the 2 Mew Beta is standard, like I think I can put that away, but the Assembled Nightingale is actually really important because I expected to play against a lot of DPE, and Assembled Nightingale's effect is that she can detach a material and make herself basically indestructible at battle and card effects, and you take no battle damage, and it can attack directly, so it makes Zeus super easy to make, and it a lot of people who don't play around it, because a lot of people will wait for the rank 1 to pop the rank 1. You make the Assemble Nightingale first, and then the Assemble Nightingale is protected from all their pops. So then you just attack, use Zeus, and then you use full combo mean too. So that card is pretty good. Beatrice, because, you know, use the combo, you send any card from deck to grave. Ridiculous card, don't know how it's illegal. And I played 1 Downward, 1 Zeus. I've seen people cut Downward, and I do understand why you would cut it, but Downward oftentimes will give this deck like just kind of like a push through a lot of disruptions. You just go Downward, you Zeus, you send their whole board, and then during their turn you can send their whole board once again, and then once it swings back to you, you just have control over the game and you win off that. And then the last cards in your action deck, 1 Arclight, 1 Entis. You don't need to play 2 Arclights. You just send these off to Viner, or if they Maximus you. And then the last card in the extra deck was the 1 DPE. Just to, you know, this card's insane. But if Scythe gets banned, I might even go back to playing Dragoon, honestly, if Scythe gets banned, because Dragoon just destroys DP, and if everyone's playing DP, Dragoon might just be the correct option, and a bunch of tokens, and cool. Next, to go off into the side deck was it definitely was it definitely was good for me, but I'm just gonna kind of breeze through it. I played 3 Droll because Birds and Drytron, 3 Lancia. This is a card that has fallen out of favor in a lot of people's side decks, but against Sword Soul, you need to stop them from summoning Protoss, and Lancia is the best thing at doing that because they literally cannot summon Protoss. Droll's good against Sword Soul as well. You put in Drolls, and then when they search the emergence off the Shizhao, you Droll them, and then they just can't Protoss you. And as long as they don't Protoss you, you win. Then the last monster I played in my side was 1 Token Collector. This is because you can send it off Beatrice, but in hindsight, I probably should have cut this card for another copy of another card in my side deck that I get into right now, which is 2 copies of Dark Ruler. I should have played a 3rd copy of it. It never really came up, but in hindsight, that would have been the correct choice because the 1 Token Collector, like, it's not really as good as you think it is. Like, it's strong when it's strong, but Dark Ruler is better, like, in so many different instances that I definitely should have maxed out on this, especially considering a lot of Bird players are cutting Oath. Dark Ruler becomes super strong, and it's really strong as Dogmatic and Invoking Flunder as well. Then the last 6 cards in the side deck were all back row hate. It was 3 Cyclone, 2 Twin Twisters, and 1 Reboot. Reboot is like a god card against back row decks, and Twin Twisters is like more copies of Cyclone, except slightly worse because it destroys, but sometimes it's better because it can hit multiple cards. I played against a Mystic Mind player, and that was actually my final round that I lost because he used Curse Seal, a Forbidden Spell, on my Cyclone. Then he Prohibition called Twin Twisters, and it was just impossible for me to win at that point. He even had a second Prohibition that he called Feather Duster with, even though I didn't play Feather Duster, but that was like you know, like putting like lemon on a burn, you know, or like putting salt in a wound. So you know what, it is what it is. These cards were all pretty good for me, and yeah, guys, that is the profile. Once again, guys, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to let us know anything interesting that you'd want to see next, and yeah.
Alright guys, so that was Talha with his Drytron deck profile. If you guys liked the video, go ahead and like the video, comment down what you guys want to see next, and like I always say, my name's Hamza. Keep on shining, never go on your dreams. Peace.